welcome to a new webinar series on use cases in federated API management. My name is Marilena and I'm the head of product and marketing here at APIIDA, and I'm really happy to guide you through this new series here. So as you may know, last year in our webinars, we already talked about the introduction of API ops within an organization's API roadmap and the whole transition towards federated API management and the corresponding benefits that come with that one. So you can also find these recordings on our YouTube channel, so just make sure to take a look at it. Today we are going to dive a little bit deeper into the specific use cases that may be a reason to transition to federated API management. And in these use cases, which we will talk about today and in the following webinars during Q1, federated API management really acts as an enabler. So our first use case today is about moving to the cloud. I want to get started with a quote I took out of the market guide for API gateways from Gartner, which is one of the biggest analysts, of course, in this space. So it says, the industry movement toward gateways exposing open APIs and API management tools that can operate gateways from multiple vendors indicates that, in the long term, gateways may become a commodity. And that's the whole point here. Basically, what they are saying is, looking for a gateway isn't something that you should be doing in the future, because gateway is becoming a commodity, and we see that right now. I had the chance to see Mark O'Neill, VP Analyst at Gartner, at the API Days in Paris, and he himself took it even one step further at his keynote there. And he talked about how people want to do all kinds of things with their gateway and may have like different requirements and they try to handle with the gateways. So in the end, the gateway is all blown up to a point where it almost looks like a giant dinosaur. He called it the gateway saurus. So at this point where you have that gateway saurus, the gateway just gets too difficult to manage. There is a trend to bring your own gateway, where organizations have gateways and only want a management layer on top of them. They just do not want another gateway saurus. So let's take a look at how this might fit into your company's landscape. So in many companies, this is structured similarly at least, and could look something like that. You have all kinds of tools here that work with or around your APIs, like the CI/CD pipeline for the automation. You have the end-to-end testing, the repos, and stuff like that. And while all of these services are included in the full lifecycle management, most companies do not utilize the full lifecycle management to its full extent. Meaning they don't use everything that is included in there or could be included. So they might even, as in this example, end up with a situation where you have two different networks of mesh services that somehow work together for like a variety of reasons. And in such a landscape, it's really hard to keep track of the source of truth for your APIs. Where are they defined in the first place? What is the leading source here? And which APIs are you actually running and how are you running them? So right here, this is where we at APIIDA excel and see the value that you gain by bringing federated API management into that picture, into that landscape. Because then you are actually able to have this one single source of truth. So to look at it from like a different angle, and if we keep talking about that single source of truth, you can put that right here in the middle like we have it here. So in the heart of your whole company's API landscape, because that is basically the point where you need it. It is responsible for all the discovering, for provisioning, and the security of all your APIs. And everything around that, like the design, the development tools, the gateways, the testing tools, that's all interchangeable. You just use whatever tool is best fit for your team and your requirements that you have. And that might change. And you just get rid of the tool and take another one. So you see, there are no limits here. And like Mark O'Neill said, gateways are becoming part of these interchangeable parts too. So the gateway has to fit your scenario, your requirements, and not the other way around. So the gateways, like many other tools you already use, will become more and more something you can easily replace when needed. So, and if you look more closely at the picture we've painted here, it becomes clear that this core and the single source of truth at the center must be of strategic importance. This part is essential because this is where you directly track the execution of your API roadmap, your strategic goals. This core has nothing to do with how the API design is done, for example. It just doesn't care about how you do your versioning, stuff like that. It only takes care that it's in line with your overall API strategy and you can keep track of your roadmap. This, of course, comes with lots of benefits. Let's start on the left-hand side with the first one. Catalog and manage access on any platform. So your APIs will be spread across multiple systems, and you will most likely also have different kinds of APIs, like event-driven ones and not just simple REST APIs. By bringing them together like that in one central location, you can make consumers' lives a lot easier. There is then only this one place where they have to look to see if an API already exists and how it works. It's documented, it's all there. So there is this one single place where they can get access to the APIs instead of painstakingly searching multiple portals for the correct solution and maybe even end up not finding one. That's something you really would want to avoid. And obviously, this here will drive adoption. It shortens your time to value and improves the dev experience because, let's face it, they just don't want to waste their time searching for all that information. And here you have everything in one place. The second one in the middle is automate APIs on any platform. So you need to provision, change, and version your APIs on all your environments. Of course, when you have 5 different runtimes or 5 different workflows attached, for example, and you maybe even need to do some of this stuff manually, we see that quite often for our customers, you will greatly benefit from one single core to handle all these tasks in terms of complexity and also cost. So you also enable your platform or operations team to do their job, and you free your developers from waiting time at the same time, and that normally comes with such workflows. So there even is research that points to a time saving in the waiting time with up to 85%, and that's a whole lot when you try to bring that over to money-wise. The third point, of course, manage compliance and protect sensitive data. This is something you obviously need to be prepared for, and it's even harder to ensure a high grade of security in a growingly complex API and overall IT landscape. But with that single source of truth that has all the information on every API, nothing falls through the cracks. You can easily enforce guidelines and reduce your security risks big time. All of these benefits that we have just heard about come together in our product, the API control plane. The API control plane allows you to fully leverage the power of federated API management and acts as a single source of truth that we just talked about here in the middle and in the core and the heart of your API landscape. But let's take a closer look in how this can help you in different use cases. And as I said today in this webinar, we are first looking at a use case that is very common and that we see quite often when we talk to customers or prospects. And it is about moving to the cloud. And as more organizations use multi-cloud and cross-platform strategies, they need the support for a variety of cloud-provided gateways. Or on-premise gateways, micro gateways, just like a variety of these, and they need to work together. So companies are shifting their workloads from on-premise data centers into the cloud. And together with these workloads, the APIs need to be shifted as well. So that's part of the reasons why companies go there. And this transition should happen as smooth as possible, and sometimes also involves adding cloud-native API gateways into the API landscape. So, as you can see, there are several reasons why a company chooses to take the step to move into the cloud. But of course, this does not come without challenges. And that, like I picked the two biggest ones I think that are of the most importance here, and that we see most of the time. The first one is You need to decouple experience and process. So this whole moving and this transitioning to the cloud, this does not happen overnight. It's a process. And like I just said, you want it to be a smooth transition. Both systems, your on-prem and your cloud-native one, need to be up and running. And there needs to be a system that has the bigger view and all that. And the user should need to know where to look for the information. The second challenge is the different technology stacks. So these runtimes, whatever you are running, are normally based on different technologies. So it's just not possible to use either of the dev portals, for example. Of course, there's not just the challenge side to it. You will have benefits by moving to the cloud. And there are several. We can talk about the lowered capital expenditure, for example, or the lowered operation expenses, because you just need less infrastructure to maintain. You might need to require fewer staff or resources to maintain it. And so you can reduce your operating costs in the long run. Of course, you increase your agility and you enable scaling. Scaling up and down in the cloud is a lot easier. You only pay what you need and only book what you need and easily scale it up and down. You don't have to really worry about long-term changes. And of course, availability and reliability is absolutely improved because you reduce the downtime and the data loss. With these cloud providers, you have service level agreements that mostly guarantee up to 99% plus uptime, which can be leveraged to increase the availability and reliability. And of course, with all that comes a kind of grade of automation that you would want to have to just reduce the human error when you have manual processes. Okay, so just let us take a look at how this use case would look like. What's the status quo and how's the transition going to happen? Normally, the setup looks somewhat like this. These on-prem systems and data centers do not exist for no reason. Mostly we're talking about security concerns or because there are regulations that require such an infrastructure. They might even have to keep these on-prem data centers for these reasons, at least for a while in the future. But of course, you might not want to let yourself be restricted by that, so that's where the transition in the cloud takes place. You then have your on-prem gateway and you're trying to shift to the cloud and scale it dynamically, which basically means you need to create cloud-native services. You also might want to put a cloud-native gateway right beside it for several reasons. Maybe because it's more lightweight, maybe because the workload is running on none of those anyway. So if you, for example, have workloads running on Azure or AWS, you would of course want to use the corresponding Azure or AWS gateway with that. So you could still have your on-prem services, and that's what we see on the right side of that picture, where we also did the transition to federated API management. And you have your legacy API map up and running, and you just add to that. And that could be several gateways. In this example, we only have one container API gateway and one of the cloud-native API gateways, but you could have several of those. And this here is where you put the API control plane on top of all these gateways. So no matter if we're talking on-prem or if we're talking cloud-native, no matter the vendor, because your goal needs to be to have all these different runtimes in sync with each other and have one place to manage them. You will then have one developer portal for all your APIs, and not only one or the other, because your consumer shouldn't have to care about where you are running your APIs. They just need one marketplace to choose which APIs to use. So with the API control plane, you then gain this one single source of truth we were talking about all the time. The APIs can be secured the same way, documented the same way, developed the same way, etc., etc. And of course, again, this comes with the benefits we were just talking about a few minutes ago. So, all we've heard now is this just about a tool and tooling in general. And I think I made a point here that of course it's not. API management and the role of API management is changing. And we talked about it earlier already. API management will and needs to become a strategic topic. All this tooling you have there is replaceable. It's fully tactical. But the whole experience coming with your APIs and your API management, that is something that will make the difference. This directly impacts your business results and your differentiation of your competitors. So, it is important to have a strategic API roadmap in place and measure how mature your API management really is. And to answer all these questions and to help you excel, we have developed an API maturity assessment, which can be found on our website. And of course, if you want to take a look at the APIIDA API control plane, you can just get started on the APIIDA website and start the onboarding process there, and you even get a 30 days professional version for free. So this is it for today. I'm very much looking forward to seeing you in one of the other webinars that we will be available. For example, the next one in February 8, where we will be talking about unified API catalogs and so on. And of course, if you would really like to meet us in person, and we would be happy to meet you in person, next chance is the APIIDA in Dubai, which will take place on February 22nd and 23rd. Okay, so thank you for listening, and if any questions, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn or on our website.